Tonight on Insights on PBS Hawaii. The candidates courted voters for many months, and on Tuesday, the voters finally rendered their verdict. Our panel of veteran political observers will help us put local, state, and national election results into perspective. Now live in our studio, our host, Dan Boylan.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. It was a long, bitter, and expensive election season, but when the votes were finally cast and counted on Tuesday, we wound up pretty much where we started, with the status quo. Hawaii voters chose candidates in highly contested races at all levels of government, setting the stage for important decisions out of City Hall, out of the state legislature, and out of Capitol Hill. Our election was tainted by a shortage of ballots at 24 polling sites on Oahu, causing polls to stay open late and delaying returns. Still, the big races were not close, and Hawaii stayed true to its blue democratic tradition while sending a majority of women to Congress for the first time. Here on Insights, we've been hosting candidates almost weekly since June, and we're tired of them, and I think they're tired of us. Before we put the 2012 election to rest, however, we want to review the major races. To help us put all the results into perspective, we've gathered some of our favorite political observers around the table tonight. And we want your input as well. What's on your mind? Which races surprised you? What will you be watching in the upcoming sessions of Congress, the state legislature, and the city councils? You can join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments for our guests. The contact information you now see on your screen will be repeated throughout the program. Don't forget that Insights is also available live on your computer screen at pbshawaii.org. And as always, the video will also be posted online after tonight's program. Let's welcome our guests who've watched too many election cycles to count. Richard Borreca has been covering news and politics in Hawaii for 40 long years on television, radio, and in print. He's now a political columnist for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser, where he gets to express his opinion 3 times a week. Richard has attended 7 national conventions and interviewed every Hawaii governor since John Burns. Chad Blair is a reporter host for Honolulu Civil Beat. Before Civil Beat went online in 2010, Chad was a reporter for Pacific Business News, Hawaii Public Radio, and Honolulu Weekly. Chad has a PhD in American Studies from UH Manoa and published his dissertation as a book titled Money, Color, and Sex in Hawaii Politics. Pander, pander, pander. What a man won't do to sell books. Wayne Yoshioka is the political reporter for Hawaii Public Radio, covering government and politics at the local, state, and national level. He started his journalism career covering city government for KITV News. In between those 2 jobs, Wayne was public affairs officer for the State Department of Defense under 4 governors. And Neal Milner is Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where he taught for nearly 40 years. He currently provides political analysis and commentary for KITV News, which is where he spent this past election evening. That makes, let's see, 3 of us with PhDs. You 2 will always come in last on all questions, because this is where we appreciate you all being here, obviously, particularly the PhDs. So it's the status quo all over again, deja vu all over again, all of that stuff. Was there anything that was new, anything about this election in Hawaii or nationally that particularly surprised you? Professor Milner?
I feel now I should talk with a deeper voice since you emphasized my credentials, but I'll speak to everybody. I think that it's better to understand how much wasn't new, because that's how you understand Hawaii politics. What's new, although not as new as people think, is the kinds of campaign that was run for the mayor's race. But that's new only to the extent that it's sophisticated and that there was more of it and that it was more visible. What Pacific Resource Partners did was really quantitatively different, but we've had negative things here before. The kinds of sophistication that they brought in is a little bit different. Not so much just the ads, which everybody got to see, but the kind of ground game that they have. So we can talk about that more later if you want, but I think that's the new. And the one other thing, the one other thing very quickly is Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, not only is she a new face, but she jumped the line. She did what Democratic candidates in this state don't like to do, or if they like it, they restrain themselves, and that is she didn't follow any kind of hierarchy to work her way up from there. She decided to take a risk. She decided to do it with not a whole lot of money, and she pulled it off, and that's very different from, and she's young enough to be a lot of our politicians' granddaughter, I suppose.
I think one of the things that the election did in the general election was to answer the question, can Republicans win major offices? And the answer is no. I mean, if Linda Lingle, the last election she ran in, she won by 93,000 votes. This one, she lost by more than 100,000 votes. So there's a big change there. There's a big difference. I don't think it was a landslide against Republicans locally as much as it was a landslide against the Republicans nationally that carried on through to the local races. So the Republicans are in a world of hurt.
In any respect, was it a landslide against her? Were people carrying gripes over from the last 2 years?
I think she left office as governor, not under a cloud, but sort of a dispirited mood. That she was fed up with the electorate, and the electorate was fed up with her, and it was good that everyone left, and that's the way it ended. She didn't do anything to burnish her reputation when she left office as governor. If she had come back, and remember when Ariyoshi left office? All those years ago, he had a big campaign on, I'm going, but I'm giving you the Emin Center. We're doing the Million Trees of Aloha. And by the way, here's not one, but 2 complete books on all the accomplishments I had. Of course, he had 3 terms. But, you know, there was a much better reputation like that. She left office and just said, I'm not going to talk to you for 6 or 8 months.
But Mazie Hirono had the trump card. She had Danny Noe. A vote for Linda Lingle was a vote against Danny Noe, for him keeping the chairmanship of the Appropriations Committee. So she had the trump card, and it's hard to vote against
I'd have
Danny
to agree
Noe.
with that. I mean, besides the words keiki and kapuna and values, the words that Mazie Hirono said over and over and over
my
again.
mother.
And your mother, exactly. Although she dropped the mother, curiously, during the general election, said it much more during the primary. But she stuck with that Dan Inouye will be appropriations chair unless the Republicans, 4 of them, take over. That said, I'll say something else about Linda Lingle. It's hard to remember this, but she was viewed early on as actually maybe taking this race nationally. Had Barack Obama not been on that ticket, probably would have been a different story. But having said that, she also made some mistakes. Speaking of Dan Inouye, Linda Lingle tried to say, you know, I'll be able to work with Dan Inouye, and we'll be bipartisan just like Ted Stevens. And boy, Dan Inouye was having nothing of that. You're not going to bring up my late friend Ted Stevens and try and say, I'm going to work with you.
But I think that's all of these comments overestimate the ability of the Republican Party to do anything. I think the Republican Party is in a situation right now where they had 2 good candidates who basically ran decent campaigns. They did it a little bit differently. They did the 2 ways you run a campaign. One emphasized the conservative side a little bit more. The other did the other thing. They both lost. I don't think candidates even matter anymore. There is nobody that is likely to come along in the near future that can win an election as a Republican there. It's about...
On a statewide.
On a statewide. Why? Because party identification is very stable.
There has to be some macro reason why that's not... All right, well, let's have the macro reason.
The macro reason is...
It's an R after your name.
Well, that's right. The macro reason is that party identification is a relatively stable thing. And if you combine it changes. People change their identification, but slowly, and if you think about where they are, for a Republican to win right now, they have to have so much of a shift from the Democratic-leaning independents and from Democrats that the arithmetic is just insurmountable. There may be other things.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Look, as recently as 2006, 2008.
Yeah.
When was the last time that Linda was elected?
2006.
2006. The Democrats essentially didn't even run a candidate against her. She was so strong with an R after her name. So what I'm trying to say is, where's the and that many people actually say they identify as Democrats, say I am a Democrat. Is it that great? I mean, an awful lot of people say that they're intimidating.
Let's take a look at Tulsi Gabbard, though. I mean, she was an anomaly. She turned it around, and I mean, she was unelectable, but she won because she had no track record. She didn't finish her state legislature career, her city council, and she became a candidate for Congress, and she won. Not only that, she got a lot of Republican votes in the 2nd Congressional District who were veterans and said, I want Tulsi Gabbard. So she didn't have
Tulsi
a track record.
Gabbard did actually have a track record. One of the things that she did is she changed the perception out there of what she stood for. I think her views on gay marriage, I mean, she was adamantly against civil unions and gay marriage, just like her father. Her father, formerly a Republican, who then became a Democrat, and she changed her story, and I think people believed it. She sounded sincere. She said, look, I went overseas, I served with other folks that I had never met before in the military, and I learned that it's a very complicated and different world, and we have to respect and tolerate each other. That's a pretty big thing. You know, Tulsi Gabbard, people in India today are talking about her because she's a Hindu elected to Congress. Can you imagine that?
And Tulsi is an Indian name?
Tulsi's a Hindu name. I don't know if it's an Indian name.
And it's also from Tulasi, which is Samoan.
Oh, so, that's right.
So
we haven't answered your question. The question is,
Okay.
will the Republicans, why can't the Republicans get somebody elected? Because you were absolutely right, Neal. That was their top bench. I mean, it was Linda Lingle and Charles Lejeune. There's probably nobody even close to that in terms of stature, and I'm still kind of scratching my head over it.
Well, let me go back to what you said for a second. I think there's a couple of differences. Linda Lingle was an incumbent who won initially the first term against the Democrats, umpteenth to the choice, and so that was a success. Then she ran as an incumbent, and I frankly think that the Democrats tanked. They didn't run a candidate against her that was at all. Randy Iwasi, who ran against her, is not a great candidate, and he took one for the team. And I also think the Republican Party is even worse off than it is. It certainly is statistically worse off than it was in 2006. So I keep coming back to the fact that if I were a Republican right now trying to rebuild the party, I would have to say that the conditions are so dire that worrying about candidates is going to be deflect from the fact that you have to figure out a way to see yourself as essentially a marginal group.
Would Lingle have done better if 18 months ago she had left the Republican Party and said, I'm an independent? I'm like the two other independents that are now in the U.S. Senate. I'm going to be I'm not going to be a Republican. I'm not going to be a Democrat. I'm going to be for Hawaii, and that's going to be my political party. Would that have?
I mean,
would that have
she
helped
was the former chair of the party.
Sure.
She actually, the party was Linda Lingle in so many ways. There's the Republican wing of the party, and there's the Linda Lingle wing. I don't think she could have pulled it off. I think she would have alienated what base that she had among the Republican Party. East Honolulu may not have gone for her as strongly as they did. We're scratching our heads still about what happened.
But the Republican Party at the lower house level did very well. I mean, we have Lauren Cheap, who won.
Well, wait a minute, though, but they lost. They actually lost
one.
They lost Corinne Ching.
They lost one. They didn't win in the Senate.
Fred Hemmings lost to Laura Phelan.
Right.
They've got two new young seats.
With
one of whom has and she's got some experience.
If they were much cleverer than I think they are, I think that perhaps there would be a bit of an opening in the House organizational struggle for the Republicans to play a card. I don't think they're Akamai enough to be able to do it, but I think that would be the only way that the Republicans in the legislature.
Explain that a little bit better for folks.
Akamai
what do you mean? No, that's not what I mean. I'm not sure everybody understands all the internal organizational.
Right now, the Senate of the legislature is organized. They have a speaker, they have a vice speaker or a vice president, and they're all ready to go. But the House does not have an organization yet. They don't know who the leader is going to be. Calvin Say's been the leader for 13 years. He's up now to be reelected. There's another group that is suddenly being run by the former Speaker of the House, Joe Souki, that is challenging Calvin Say for that. The estimates range between 13 and 20 on either side. So there's no definite win. To win, you have to have at least 26 votes. There's not 26 votes on either side yet. There's enough wiggle room for clever Republicans to say, let's make a deal.
Right.
But you can't be real greedy on that. You have to be very careful how you do that.
But one thing we can say about Lauren Cheap and Beth Fukumoto is they will stay Republicans and they won't turn coat and turn Democrats.
No,
all of a sudden.
but the thing is that, the thing is that will they vote for, will they say, here's our 7 Republican votes, and we will vote for either Joe Suki or Calvin Say in return for X. It can't be a really big X, or else the Republicans...
Like a chairmanship or something.
They're not
like
going to get a chairmanship.
The long-term arc is still that the Republicans are going downhill in the state, if you do it statistically or whatever. And they've been here before with good young candidates who win. Nililani Malka in 2004, right? I mean, when there was this renaissance of Republicans getting elected in that midterm or whenever 2 years after I think Lingo was elected, and then they started this spiral. And the fact that they can't win this little corner of East Oahu anymore, you know, the one that goes around to the Fred Hemmings.
Yeah, and they're not winning areas like Kona that they used to be able to pick up a seat or two.
And Aina Haina, I mean, East Oahu used to have 3 Republican legislators in the House, and now it's
0.
Well, 1 because of Gene Ward.
Right,
ran
Ward.
unopposed.
That's right.
Speaking of which, there may be a challenge to Gene Ward's leadership in the House. I mean, there's only 3 Republicans that really stayed from the previous legislature. The 4 ones that are in there now, they're new, including Beth Fukumoto and Lauren Cheap. By the way,
do a junk and poll?
there's only 7 of them, so have to work it out. So go ahead, Dan.
We have some questions, needless to say, about some other races. Do you think the election was fouled for Cayetano due to the corrupt polling process that occurred on Tuesday? Terry and Kailua, I think he means the not enough.
I don't
balance.
think it was corrupt. I think it was a massive snafu. They made a lot of mistakes in there. There was a bit of incompetence going on there, but I don't think it was designed that way. It was undesigned, and I also don't think that Cayetano lost by more than 10,000 votes, so it's not like
23,000 you lost by. Yeah.
That was the last one. So that's not enough to have changed. There were not 23,000 people who.
Do we have unanimity on that position?
Yes,
all right, that one is decided. Thank you. This is Lee from Hawaii Kai. Now this speaks to what we were just talking about. The local Republicans might have done better because they had stronger candidates than their opponents, but the national agenda stood in the way.
I think actually there's some truth to that. Look at what happened to Murdoch in Indiana and to Aiken in Missouri. These 2 people running for the Senate, and they both lost, to McCaskill in Missouri, and I forget the name of the person who got in, the Democrat in India. The remarks about rape, the remarks about what a woman can do with her own body if for some reason she is raped, or how perhaps it's God's plan, I think that really that backfired, and a lot of people picked up on that nationally, and I think it may have played a role locally as well. Mazie Hirono came out very early and very strong when Todd Aiken, the news broke about what he had to say about rape. It took Linda Lingle a day or 2 to get around to the fact that this could hurt Republicans nationally.
I think voter turnout, though, I don't think people really care about the national agenda. And if you look at how Mazie Hirono ran her campaign, she put Dan Inouye, front and center. And I don't think Linda Lingle had a chance. But Linda Lingle, to her credit, made Mazie run a better race. Forced her to do 5 debates, which Mazie did not want to do. So I think they have a role. They'll make the Democrats run a little harder. But to that extent of winning, I don't think so.
But look, when you have a vice presidential candidate like Paul Ryan, who sponsored legislation that would not even allow rape in the case of incest, allow abortion in the case of incest, then I think you really are at a disconnect with a lot of people in this country.
And in this state. And in this state.
To allow abortion rights in the 70s.
That's one thing I don't think we've mentioned that I thought was a big factor in the race, was sort of the 4-year obstruction nationally of Obama. Our candidate, our guy who was born here, that we supported 74%.
You sure he was born here?
Yes, I'm sure he was born here. I trust the newspapers, and now they report births. And it just seems to me, a 70% brown state, as this one is, looking at that first non-white president getting the treatment that he did from Republicans, and often just for no other purpose than to thwart him. That had to be preying on people's minds.
Let's say that the Republicans didn't have those 2 incredibly insensitive gaffes, and let's say that Romney won You really think it would have made a significant difference for Lingle? She lost. She got beat badly
25
everywhere.
points.
Yeah, everywhere. So she might have made it a little bit closer.
Laie, she did okay.
She did okay. Well, she did okay actually. Laie is probably
East Honolulu as well, correct?
No,
not as
really.
well as
No, she did that. She did that little stretch. That North Shore.
North Shore. That's correct.
Where Richard Foley won.
One house district.
Yeah.
One house district, and it was the one where the Mormons were.
Yeah, and they've been very active getting voter turnout up there, and that's a significant fraction of that population of that district is in Laie. It's about 7,000 people.
And Richard Foley won the House seat.
Is there a future? Is there a future for Linda?
I don't. And whenever
I agree with you. I don't.
Whenever
think so
I say this, I always want to be very careful to say that I'm not even talking about the competence of I'm talking about what would have to be different in order for her to be able to pull it off, and it's just not imaginable to me that a situation would change where a Republican could get elected. So,
well, I would also point out the example of Richard Nixon in 1962, running for governor of California just after he lost the presidency, coming back 6 years later, being elected president.
Many crocodile tears are shed over the lack of a viable Republican Party in Hawaii. Has anyone at the table tonight ever voted for a Republican? Why should anyone believe you really care about having a two-party system? Jimmy R. asked the question.
I'll admit it. I have voted for members of the Green parties, the Democrats, the Republicans, and other independents. I am less concerned about ideology as I am about the person and their platform. So I'm not ashamed to admit that. As a journalist, I may have crossed a line by admitting that, but I'll be frank. I don't have a problem with just pure party labels. I have a problem with the Tea Party wing of the Republican Party, but it's the ideas and the person and the character that matter to me.
And you know, it's the process of getting a viable candidate. I mean, what is a viable candidate? Just because you sign wave, you have TV ads, and you hand out brochures, doesn't mean you're going to win unless you go canvass house to house and make yourself known to voters. I mean, that's the only way you're going to win.
Wait, I think the question, in all due respect, indicates something that's become very wrong in American politics. The notion that you cannot step back from your ideology and offer advice. People don't have to take the advice I give or the analysis I give. But if you start dismissing people on the basis of what they vote, I'm not so concerned about them hurting me, but I'm about the way that they may hurt themselves from meeting. I've been for something that I wrote recently. Some high-level Republican wanted to get together with me. He said, it's an interesting piece. I want to sit down and talk to you about it. He laughed because he said, are you willing to do that? And I said, but to me, that's the spirit of not just politics as it should be, but inquiry as it should be.
Joan from, I'm not sure where she's from, an independent voted for, in her words, whining Maisie, even though she thinks Lingle is more intelligent because she did not want the Republicans to take over the Senate. That was a big, I mean, it wasn't just in Inouye's name, but it was taking over the Senate and Obama at the top.
That was doctrine. And it was funny because at, what was it, 3 o'clock it was announced, okay, the Democrats have the Senate. By 3 o'clock on Election Day, Democrats would not lose the United States Senate. So, therefore, now at 3:30, should there then be a flood of people to vote for Linda Lingle? You know,
I would go further back than that. You know, the public opinion polls early on, except for the ones that Lenny Klompus and his campaign were actually conducting, saying it was a close race, showed that Lingle was going to lose and lose by double digits. Early on, before that, yeah, nationally, Lingle might have played a role in controlling the Senate, but it didn't turn out that way.
There may have been a little bit of difference in your poll and
the advertisers as well, just a little bit of a difference.
But ours never wavered. She was down at 40%. In 2011, she never did anything to move the needle. I don't know if you could be a PR person and do it differently. Could you have run, a personal campaign instead of an ideological campaign that she ran?
The question was often over the last 2 years, where is Linda? What's she doing?
Exactly.
And I was never clear about that, if she was doing anything. Or some of her staff people were working at the legislature, but I didn't see her very much.
No, she did this, How Coy Can I Be, where she wouldn't say, okay, I'm going to run. I'm going to run for the states, for the U.S. Senate. You know,
I'll let you know in October, maybe.
Exactly right. It was just it was irritating.
And in the meantime, I'm learning paddleboarding from Fred Hemmings.
And walking around my new neighborhood in Hawaii. Hi.
No. Okay, I mean, she's not a close neighbor, but I mean, she's done community stuff. She did some stuff on literacy, so she's
active with the Boy Scouts, I think, if I remember correctly.
I think, I mean, she was totally relieved to get out of being governor, as lots of politicians are, and I think she saw it as an opportunity to do some other things. But you're right. Sooner or later, if you're going to run for Senate, you especially at that. Considering the difficulties that Republicans have, you have to start early.
What do you think of the Republican winners, Lauren Cheap and Beth Okamoto, say about the future of the party in Hawaii? Both young people, 25, 28. I think the two of them are maybe 29.
But Beth Fukumoto's married to David Chan.
Married to the chair. So, but there is a youth movement going. I mean, we had Tiffany Au on here, a young, intelligent young woman. She handled herself well.
Lost badly to Scott Psyche.
That's the Republicans' hope. Is you've got to build very small, and you've got to be very humble about it. You don't run for the United States Senate. You run for the smallest seats you can. You get that. You build up trust in the community, and you look like the rest of Hawaii.
But former Governor John Waihee, back in the 70s, said, nobody's going to give you political power. You got to go there and take it. Right. You got to take it. You got to grab it out of their cold hands, and that's what they did. You got to fight. You got to fight, and you got to fight hard.
Well, but that's considering they
Grizzly. Grizzly, cold hands.
Well, I'm going to say now is going to sound dull. I think the question that you have to ask is, are they going to be here after the next election? Because as good a potential that these people have, the Republican Party's history in the past 15, 12 years or so has been you get some of these folks in and then they lose, and because they're in districts that are fairly competitive and in that same area actually. And so I think it's a start, and I know how hard the Republicans have to work to get candidates to run and how much harder it is to get them to repeat if they lose. And it's a good start that they did what they did, but I think we really have to watch to see if they're going to.
2014 is the 60th anniversary of the Democratic Revolution, and that's going to be the day. That's going to be the year they win.
Jonah wants to know, how much impact do ads have? If there had been no advertising at all, which big races would have come out significantly different?
I don't think there's any question the mayor's race might have been a different outcome if PRP hadn't spent, what is the current figure? $3.5 million. By the way, we haven't seen the latest filings. That won't be until December. At first, I didn't think it was moving the needle, as Dan says, because Ben just stayed right around 45% or so. But Caldwell's numbers just kept going up and up and up. And one has to think that all those ads, TV, radio, print, the mailers that were going out, did have an impact. That's a case where campaign money made a difference on TV.
Well, they also did. I think they used their ads very nicely in coordination with the kind of ground game. Now that's a little murky. I'm sort of guessing at that because we don't know very much about what was going on the ground. We know.
But they were canvassing. They were
canvassing. But I think they were doing the net.
Their commercials were omnipresent on television, and they were on radio, and you were getting leaflets in the mail. They were accusing him of everything except drowning puppies. You know, it was
But then he did that ad with the couch and the puppy, showing that they were all healthy.
With Schneider.
Well, they did the shotgun approach. I mean, they just blasted the airwaves.
But they blasted the airwaves, but they also targeted certain people on non-airwaves.
I have to say, as the owner of always two dogs, that trying to get a picture of two dogs sitting still with the rest of your family is such a coordination effort that if you can get 10 dogs and your family to sit still in one picture, you've got a real chance of running the city council.
Someone admitted the German Shepherd was photoshopped.
Yes.
Yes.
I heard that the dog.
Well, then I take it all back.
And one dog was truant.
I think.
What neighbor island race surprised the panelists?
I was a little surprised that Harry Kim came that close to getting his job back from Billy Kanoe. I mean, he raised very little money intentionally. He had
$20,000.
Right. Yeah. Billy Kanoe had so much of the major power players behind him. I mean, he worked with for Dan Inouye in Washington. That race surprised me that it was close as it was.
That's a race that I regret that we didn't
spend more effort,
spend more time covering, because that obviously something as something is going on the Big Island that we're not attuned to, because to have that much dissent for a mayor, which had not been that controversial, I thought, during his first term.
Except that, like all the other mayors, he came in 2010, and therefore he was dealing with the economic crisis. Right. He had to do some cutting, he had to do some readjusting, he had to do this, that, and the other thing, and I think. But I think all governors and all mayors.
Geothermal on the Big Island is a big.
And by the way, there was an East-West split. I think one of the papers, the Hilo paper, once again noted. I think mostly the Hilo side went for Harry, and a lot of the Kona side went for Billy.
Billy Kenoi moved half of his cabinet over.
Correct.
To Kona.
Yes, he did.
And so he fertilized the field.
Yeah, he did. But I stood in line at the Kona airport and had people complaining to me about how the mayors over are all Hilo-centric and they never pay any attention. I think Kenoi actually made a significant effort to try to deal with that. But the Big Island's a tough island, remember. Dante Carpenter, remember Dante Carpenter? Yep. Remember the things that have happened over there?
Bernard O'Connor?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who forget that?
Whose name nobody knew.
Harry Kim fulfills people's fantasies about the anti-politician.
Mm-hmm. It's the blue jeans.
But, well, he doesn't take a lot of money. Well, no, that's the thing. That's the thing. The interesting thing about that race is that usually the anti-politicians lose.
Right.
And we feel sad about it because they reflect the kind of politics that people would like to go back to, or at least they think we used to have. But the fact that he was able to come so close.
Just a couple of points, right?
1, 2.
It was very close.
Very close.
50-48, I think it was. Yeah. How can an unknown Tadashi Ono, this was an interesting race, overtake a very popular Corinne Ching in Liliha, and Ono, a Democrat, took out an incumbent Republican?
Because he's a school teacher, and he took out a school teacher, and they both had the same base.
Same base. But he must have worked like the devil too.
Well, the younger politicians do. They know how to canvass it. They go out there and they walk and walk.
Dan, I haven't looked at the latest numbers, but the last campaign filings for both those candidates, Takashi Ono significantly outraised Corinne Ching by several tens of thousands of dollars. Again, I haven't seen the final report. I think that had something to do with that. He was out there, very aggressive, young, charismatic. Corinne, maybe perhaps had just been around a little bit too long.
She did the I Love Liliha.
I know. I mean, she has to be sitting at home tonight wondering, what did I do wrong? Very popular in many ways, but they didn't send her back.
Ron in Manoa wants to know, can we or can we not stop the power of the unions? I was listening to our former Lieutenant Governor, Duke Iona, the other night, telling us that the unions cannot, they are the bugaboo. They have caused us a tremendous organization. And
I think that's what the Republicans sit up at night and have voodoo dolls with union pins, and I don't think it's true. I think that to a large extent, and union leaders will tell you this, you really can't get the union members to do what the union leaders want. You will get the union members to reflect the community that they're in. It's not going to be, there's going to be some. I mean, obviously unions have the ability to communicate with their members much better than other groups do, but they don't have, they're not, it's not lockstep. You have to make an argument, and it has to reflect.
Let's segue to the mayoral race, though. Look at Kirk Caldwell. He had all the unions behind him, and you know, he's a nice guy. When is he going to say no to the unions is what I'm going to wait for.
And that was one of Cayetano's criticism of him. You're too nice. You'll never say no.
And Cayetano did say no when he was governor to the unions.
Especially the teachers' union.
Yes.
Larry from Makiki asked a very interesting question. The candidates that won were pro-rail. Was this election a referendum for rail?
It began as a referendum for rail. By the end, rail was not that important. That is, it began as a referendum for rail because the impetus for Cayetano...
Or against rail.
Against rail. The impetus for getting a candidate with the heft and with the ability of Cayetano depended totally on a strong group of people, lots of them Republicans, not always, coming in anti-rail. And so initially that was the issue. Over time, and this is one of the sophisticated things that PRP did, two things happened, one of which is that PRP got people to talk about other issues, and the electorate changes so that you had undecided folks coming in. So the last part of the campaign, I don't think was very much about rail at all.
Well, remember, you also had the lawsuits.
It was about Cayetano, or it was about party identification.
But you also had the court rulings coming in and putting rail on hold for a while. I mean,
and we had 2 traffic jams.
And you had a rail policy that came from Cayetano that didn't exactly set the world on fire.
His BRT, his bus plan.
Yeah.
Well, Cayetano shifted. When he came out in February, he said, I'm not against rail, I'm against this rail because it put columns and, concrete in front of the water. And he said, we can talk about rail, but then he shifted.
Well, I'll say one other thing. Caldwell shifted. After the primary, he started talking a lot more about infrastructure, sewers and water lines than he did about rail. And I think he realized that, in fact, a mayor has to do a lot of those day-to-day grunt stuff, and it's not all about rail.
So on your poll near the end, I think it was your poll, there was a couple of significant things, one of which is that the undecided folks were much less likely to see rail as the important issue.
Right.
And the poll suggested that Ben was being seen much more as a one-issue candidate than Caldwell was, and that the race to the bottom on support of rail had kind of stopped. I always thought that people exaggerated the opposition to rail because it was at a very vulnerable stage and because that's where the impetus came from the first place. I don't even know. I mean, the idea that there has to be a referendum on rail, rail is part of a political process. Rail goes forward now because it was passed by elected political officials, whether it's good or bad or not. The idea that you need some kind of referendum to move this forward, we don't make public policy that way.
That's the political scientist in you speaking, the academic political scientist. Do you really believe that if Ben Cayetano had been elected mayor, that he wouldn't have been able to stop rail?
No, he's the only thing that could stop rail.
Yeah, he could have stopped rail, and and the politics of that was very much there, I think, throughout. And what I think is interesting is that Ben did not move. What did he move? 2 percentage points from 44 to 46, and certainly that PRP had a big part of that.
Absolutely.
But the other part of it is Ben. Ben is a strong personality with a great name, a guy you can trust, and you can trust him to do what he says, which is stop rail. And it's sort of Fosse-like. What he gets may have been what he was going to get.
But he should have gotten elected first.
The thing
before he stopped.
Well, the thing is that when you're running a negative campaign, you have to run it against someone who the public really doesn't know that well, or else it's very hard for the public to switch off.
To define that person.
Yeah.
Right?
So if you can define, but the thing is that Cayetano is a lightning rod. He's probably the only person in well-known politician that you can do that against. If you did that against Dan Inouye, it wouldn't have worked. If you had tried to run that kind of a campaign against Inouye, would not work at all. People said, that's not Dan Inouye. I've known him for 50 years. A lot of people would say, that's not Ben Cayetano. I've known him for 35 years. He's not a dishonest guy. He's an honest guy. But he was also the kind of person who could attract a lot of controversy when he was governor. So there was that wedge that they could move in on.
I think that's right. How was it decided that Mazie Hirono run for the Senate and not Colleen Hanabusa? David Waipahu.
Well, I think Colleen very much wanted to, and she waited and thought about it and felt that she could have done it. But remember, she barely got into Congress. She lost at least 3 times before she finally got that seat from Charles Dejoux, and I think in the end she had to say, just wait my turn until Senator Inouye decides to retire.
Yeah, Nita, a Democrat in Foster Village, says, why don't you people pay more attention to Republican Aaron Johansson? He is a sharp guy.
Yes, and he, the geography of Democrats versus Republicans is really pretty simple here. You can look at a map in about 30 seconds, you nail it. Republicans in the one corner, Republicans in the top corner, and then now a couple here and there. Johansson's district, now that's been a Republican for a while, but it's right smack above, just on town side of Salt Lake, between
near the airport.
It's in Honolulu Gardens and Shafter. It is military, but still, you're right, and he keeps a low profile, and he's been re-elected.
Right. He does keep a low profile. I think that's his saving grace, and also probably the thing that will limit him in the future is that you've got to come out more than he does. But he is, he's a smart guy.
Well, he's young too, though. He's only been in what, 2 terms?
2 terms.
1 term. Was
the reelected. Yeah.
Was the Democratic national win a referendum for Citizens United, Russell and Manoa? That's an interesting question. For Citizens United.
That's like having a referendum against the tidal wave. I mean, for or against, the Supreme Court defined the right to raise and spend money in such a way in that situation that you can't even have a referendum one way or the other. The court has really said it's a free speech right.
And think about this. The big losers, too, to unite nationally, Karl Rove. I mean, Mr. Super PAC, the Koch brothers as well. They did not accomplish what they wanted to do, which was to get rid of Obama and take the Senate. The status quo stayed the same, but they spent the bulk of that Super PAC money that was allowed by Citizens United.
Yeah, but even with PRP, that anonymity, people didn't like that.
No, that's right.
They didn't like that.
And that's the only real wiggle room that reformers have right now. I sit on the board of Common Cause, and there's been an enormous amount of hand-wringing because it's so hard to attack this kind of First Amendment corporation as a person argument, but it's all in disclosure.
I don't think you're going to be able to change. I mean, there was discussion. Hirono was talking during the campaign that she was introducing bills or helping to co-sponsor bills in the Congress to get around Citizens United decision, but I don't see that happening.
Well, the only thing that's going to do it is appointments during a second Obama term.
But
if there are,
it would have to march its way up to the Supreme Court again.
But for lawmakers to say, yeah, we want all the PACs known is like asking the fox to watch the hen house. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Can Dan Inouye really carry much clout beyond a small group of Democratic insiders? Can he really sway the vote on a large scale? Joyce wants to know.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, he's tremendously influential in many ways. He can help raise money. He can discuss with potential donors that perhaps their money should go here instead of here.
He has his own PAC.
Yeah, he can give money through the PAC.
I mean, his people won. Kurt Caldwell.
He has a tremendous reputation.
Won. Billy Kanoy won. Mazie Hirono won. And perhaps Marcy Greenwood will come out a winner as well. Dan Inouye still holds sway in the state of Hawaii. No question.
And during his last campaign, when you saw all these people saying praises about Dan Inouye, it was like 5 generations.
Yes.
5 generations. So it's.
Well, he's been around that long.
Yeah.
That's why the idea that there's a political machine is misleading. That always suggests that there's this kind of tight top-down organization that he controls, and that isn't really the way it works. What I think you guys are saying, he's a presence. You know, it's less mystical than that, but that's very much important.
You know, when you look at some of the state votes in the presidential election as they were put on all these maps on election night, and you see red and blue counties and so forth, and rural areas were all red, urban areas. We started out in the state with our rural areas be the areas that went Democrat first. And that, the neighbor islands were Democratic. And it's only been in, well, it's certainly not only, it's been within the last 25 years that the urban area and so forth. And you look at our map and you see in Lingle Hirono, you see a thing that it's Democrats everywhere except one House seat. And even in the other race where Cayetano was a very strong and had anti-rail support, he was getting some votes over on the windward side and in East Honolulu. And and maybe it's because we started so early as a Democratic state that we have both rural and urban.
This was one of the things that improperly Lingle was arguing that the polling was all wrong because their pollster said that no, Democrats only show up 40% of the time. You guys are measuring 60% or 53% of the time, and so your poll is therefore wrong. It wasn't. It turns out that the state is 60% Democrat.
I think this is a pretty good rule for poll interpretations by candidates, whatever party they are. Don't believe them unless you can see it.
The whole thing.
The whole poll, when they never show us the polls.
When they don't release all the numbers.
And don't use them as a source of criticism for a public poll. That doesn't mean that your poll was necessarily right, but I wouldn't necessarily turn to the apparatus of the political party that doesn't look good to find out.
It brings up a good thing, and luckily we have 2 distinguished members of the University of Hawaii here. What we need are more polls.
You do.
We need more polls,
Yeah.
not just Civil Beat and the Star-Advertiser poll. We need the University of Hawaii poll, the University of Hawaii at Hilo poll. We need more polls out there because that's the only way you're going to be able to judge that.
As UH retirees, we'll go down to McDonald's and poll the way Ben Cayetano said we should do. I believe voters were more interested in a candidate that focuses beyond rail. Caldwell received a huge boost when Carlisle publicly said he supports Caldwell. Angela
With his
said,
arm twisted behind his back and his fingers crossed. But
do you think that's true, though? I thought that ad was
I think what was always clear from the very beginning is that Caldwell and Carlisle got about the same votes in the primary, mid-20s or so, and combined that was more than the 45 or so that Ben got in the primary, forcing the runoff between the two. Those votes had to go somewhere, and our exit polling showed, not our exit polling, but the surveys that we took, because we don't actually do exit polling, and if we did, we're looking to hire someone. What those numbers showed us actually is that if you were going to vote for Carlisle, chances are you were more likely to vote for Caldwell. Cayetano, forget about it. So those numbers had to go somewhere.
And early on, Carlisle said, better build rail, and then Caldwell came out and said, build rail better.
I didn't notice that.
Jackie in Kona calls and says, Kanoe really paid attention to the West Coast, and that's why I think he won.
Sounds like
Despite the vast majority of polls, Republicans like Karl Rove were genuinely shocked that Romney lost. What does that say about the modern Republican Party?
It says two things, I think. One of which is that people, again, you don't want the partisans to explain polls to you. That's the first thing. But I think it says something deeper about the nature of American politics, and that is we've now moved into kind of a set of parallel alternative realities. That people, that the Republicans who said this and believed this were reinforcing each other by what they were reading and what they were hearing. And if you go back and look at those things and how different that was from what was pretty good evidence, that's another it's another example of how we're sort of parceling ourselves out to get information that favor only us. And I think that's part of what happened here.
Chad and Richard, given the infamous Wonder Blunder, what kind of treatment can the UH expect at the 2013 legislature? What do you think?
I think that they're going to be under a real microscope, and they better have a lot of good reasons for every single office chair they want in the legislature.
I think it might be a different kind of scope that will be applied. And it's a good thing they found these guys. They've arrested one guy's pleaded guilty, the other guy's been arrested, and so maybe that's going to take a little bit of the pressure off it. We'll see what the Board of Regents does in terms of Marcy Greenwood. But Donna Kim is retaining that committee. There's still tremendous interest in what's going on there. I agree with Richard. We're gonna see that issue at
Perhaps,
the legislature.
For the Senate, they created or recreated a higher education committee, and Brian Taniguchi is the chair of it. And Brian has always been a supporter of the University of Hawaii, so that will probably help somewhat. But still, it's going to have to go through Ways and Means. And David Ige was duly unimpressed with the conduct of the university.
Brian Taniguchi, by the way, represents Manoa, too.
Luckily for the university, we have this Public Lands Development Corporation that will overshadow everything, so they need not worry.
What can be done to increase voter turnout? Do you think instant runoff voting would increase voter participation, give minor or lesser well-known candidates a chance? And I would like to say that I would like to see the state and the city pass some sort of 60 or more day residency requirement. Steve said, any thoughts on this?
Residency requirement?
Well, leave the residency requirement. You got any thoughts on how we can increase voter turnout?
Have a revolution?
Same day registration and vote by mail.
Same day registration and
or vote by mail.
Well, you can vote by mail. You can have, and the absentee ballot numbers are going up. Totally like Oregon does,
and Washington, yes.
One of the more interesting pieces of applied political research has been on voter turnout, and a lot of the candidates in other places have picked up on this. Where they've looked at different ways of done it, and they've controlled for things in real time. What seemed to work the best is shame. And,
Yes,
and yeah,
I've read-
shame.
yes,
and,
right,
and this is how it works.
That should work well here.
Well, yeah, you get. I mean, it's public record who votes and who doesn't vote. You can get that as public record. And the most effective way of doing things that got the most bang for the buck was to essentially communicate to a person that your neighbors voted and you didn't. And when the guys initially ran the experiment, the first thing they get is a tremendous number of angry emails about that intrusiveness, and they thought, we're going to call it off. And they actually stopped the experiment, and then they looked at the data, and it turns out that was by far the most successful way. And it may sound odd, but if you think about how many things in our life are about group pressure and about social acceptance, and it's not about civic duty.
But Neal, it won't work on the Japanese American community because they won't tell you if they voted, and they won't tell you who you voted.
They don't have to tell you. They don't have to tell you. This is private. This is public record. You can look. Yeah.
But the problem with that is that who's going to be doing that? Everyone right now is pretty darn happy the way the turnout is.
Unless
Wendell over at Hilo wants to know what ethnic group voted the most percentage-wise in the state in this past election. Do we know?
Still Japanese Americans. I haven't seen the latest figures, but I don't imagine that's changed.
Because
I'm not sure we know.
Yeah, I don't know
I'm
how
not sure we know.
that.
Larry from the Hickam Air Force Base wants to know what is the future of Mufi Hanneman. We have some people who have been wounded. It seems to me. Ed Case, Mufi Hanneman, Linda Lingle. Dejoux ran, but Charles ran pretty close, so this will be his second loss.
I think Mufi and Ed Case have the same problem, and that is that Mufi's got a deeper one, but the most basic problem is that they can't get through Democratic primaries in a Democratic state. And for Case, if Case would get to the Democratic primary, he would have beaten Lingle by just as much. Mufi has that same problem. I mean, the people were so awed by the fact that he could line up a bunch of unions in the gubernatorial campaign that they didn't pay much attention to the fact that his support in the Democratic Party is a little bit fragile. And
a lot of endorsements worked for Caldwell.
Well, but Caldwell also ran a better campaign. I mean, Mufi is really in a position now where I don't think he knows how to present himself in a way that would get him elected.
And both he and Ed are three-time losers. I mean, Mufi has lost three times now running for Congress.
I don't think that Lingle can do it, and I don't think that Hanneman could do it, perhaps, maybe. But I thought Case would probably have the little bit of potential, but only if he had a big serving of humble pie first. And he went like Patsy Mink did. Patsy Mink lost Congress, then ran for mayor, lost that, and then she went, I'll go run for the city council. And she won the city council. She immediately became chair of the city council and probably the smartest woman over at City Hall, and did a good job, and then went from that back to Congress. That's what, if Ed Case wants to do something, that's what he has to do. He has to go find out the wonderfulness of
lower office.
Well, yeah, right.
The National Democratic Party blames the Bush administration for their problems. Since there's no Republican to blame in Hawaii, who can the Hawaii Democratic Party blame for the problems?
Which problems are you talking about? I mean, unemployment is very low.
Go ahead.
I mean, there are problems in the state of Hawaii. I think the education system might be one that we would point to. But in many ways, we're doing better than the rest of the country, certainly in terms of our employment numbers. What are we, 5%, 5.2, something like that? It's 8% nationally. So which problems can you specify? And then we'll be able to answer your question better, perhaps.
Doug and Manoa, I can't specify.
That's okay.
I didn't ask it. Can the four panelists imagine any scenario by which the Republican Party will become relevant in Hawaii in their lifetime? Doug and Manoa wants to know this, and there are at least three of us here, graybeards, who, well, not in our lifetime, because we're pretty far gone.
About getting home.
Yeah, we're worried about getting home tonight. But
I don't like those kinds of things.
I don't.
Anything's possible.
I might. Go ahead, Richard.
I was going to say, you're going to have some act of God right now to change it. You're going to have an enormous scandal or a big problem to cause people to lose faith in the Democratic Party totally.
Or just a charismatic Republican.
Yeah,
really.
I said long term. I did this thing for Civil Beat today, where I really think for a while, they're going to have to quit thinking of themselves the way political parties think of themselves, and think of themselves as a marginalized group that can't do its politics through conventional means. That is, they're much more like these groups of conservatives that in Southern California in the 60s that were kind of these independent, rebuilt themselves from the grassroots, or civil rights organization. They're really not a political party in the sense of being able to elect
Neal,
candidates.
we've got less than 1 minute, and I want to finish with each one with 15 seconds telling you what, Patrick wants to know, what was your favorite memory of the 2012 election season?
Boy, it was election night when we got over with it.
First Asian female senator, first Samoan American congresswoman.
Oh, I'd have to say Tulsi Gabbard's victory over Mufi Hanneman. I like Mufi Hanneman very much, but what an amazing thing to turn it around like that, to go from, she was nowhere in the polls, and to trounce Mufi like that. That was something else.
And Civilbeat got the polling right.
Thank you very much for the plug.
Even if you can't get through to some of your paying customers.
Well, maybe the best thing overall is that compared to how hard it is to hold elections in other places, that we really, even with this kind of difficulty there, you and I were on this panel yesterday when a person was from Papua New Guinea was telling us how hard it is to be there.
Got to go, Neal.
All different.
Thank you all for being with us very much. As always, it's great fun, great fun. Next week on Insights on PBS Hawaii, we put the election behind us, finally, and get back to our topic-driven discussions. Perhaps topic number one of late is the University of Hawaii. Next week, we'll be talking about the University of Hawaii athletic program, which has been in the spotlight due to what has become known as Wonder Blunder. What is the role of sports and athletics at UH? How does the investment of money and resources help or hinder the university's academic mission? We'll explore sports and higher education in Hawaii with representatives from the university and veteran sports journalists like my friend Jim Leahy. That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. Ahui ho.